The world is full of uncertainties. Your data storage shouldn't be one of them. Meet the new NetApp All-Flash SAN Array, a simple solution for all your business-critical applications. The ASA delivers dedicated block storage with superior performance, data availability, and guaranteed efficiency, as well as integrated data protection. How good is it? We guarantee availability for not 4, not 5, but 6 nines. Yeah, you heard that right. Our all-flash SAN array delivers 99.9999% uptime. Worried about cybercrime? Don't be. With our new ransomware recovery guarantee for primary storage, backed by tamper-proof snapshots, you'll be able to recover your snapshot data in the event of a ransomware attack. NetApp guarantees operational simplicity, built-in security to manage and recover from ransomware threats, and efficiencies to meet or exceed your sustainability and savings goals. Get your data storage ready for the modern world. NetApp.
Welcome, everybody, to NetApp On Air. As always, my name is Nick Howell. Thank you so much for joining us. It has been a few weeks since I've seen you guys. Due to unforeseen circumstances, we had Cisco Live last week. It has been all kinds of crazy over here on this side of the house, but I'm excited to be back with you guys because we've got some really fun stuff to talk about today. We're going to be doing some really cool stuff, talking about our entire portfolio across the board on the hardware side and where you can get started with things, just so that you know which systems do what, focus on what areas, all of that stuff. We're going to cover that today. First, a little bit of housekeeping. As always, come and join us in Discord. That is the place to be. There's thousands and thousands of NetApp customers, fans, practitioners, experts, all of that kind of stuff in there. Plus, you've got the ability to direct access, have conversations with product managers, engineers, executives, all of that stuff. And I'm in there. So come hang out with me. Come hang out with everybody in the NetApp Discord. You can find a link to that to join over there at netappdiscord.com. I'll throw a link to that up here. I am flying solo today because my partner in crime, Mr. Drew Claybrook, shout out to him, is on vacation. So I'm pushing all the buttons myself today, guys. We're going to see how well this goes because I normally really depend on him to sort of produce things behind the scenes for me. So, Drew, I love you. I'm really missing you, but if I see you online, I'm going to be really disappointed. So go enjoy your vacation and have a good time. All right. Insight registration is on the cusp of opening up. So be on the lookout for those emails. Make sure you're over at insight.netapp.com and you've got a reminder set up so that you can be ready as soon as registration opens for Insight. I can't say the exact date, but it's coming very soon. So be ready for that. I know we're working on putting sessions together. I've got some really cool activities that we're putting together for you guys. So we're back in person this year. We're back at the MGM. In case you were living under a rock for the last month and didn't hear the news, yes, Insight is back in person this October 23rd at MGM in Las Vegas. So be on the lookout for that stuff. Over the next month, a lot of great stuff's going to start coming out. You guys are going to hear about registration. You're going to hear about some of the sessions. You're going to hear about some of the activities and some of the guest speakers that we're going to have at Insight later this year. So make sure you're ready to register. Make sure you're ready to go. Let's see. Anything else? Follow us on all the socials. Follow us on all the stuff. It's 2023. You guys have to know how to do social media at this point. So yeah, I don't want to waste any more time. Let's bring our guest on the show. He needs no introduction, but I'm going to introduce him anyway. Scott has become one of the bigger, better contributors to the larger community efforts that I've been at for the last couple of years now, going way back to the A250 video from 2020. I think it was 3 years ago. He was the one that partnered with me to make that video, the more power one, that one you guys really love, right? That is where Scott and I sort of started this whole mission of making better content, bringing things forward to the community directly. So I'm going to bring him on here. Scott Bell, our senior manager for platforms, I think is what we call you now. Is that right?
That's right. Thanks for having me back, Nick. It's great to be back in the studio.
Always good to have you on, my friend. So what I wanted to talk to you about today, and we had chatted about this previously, I think we jump ahead often, and we assume that people already have a firm understanding of our portfolio family. And that might be true for existing customers. People that are OGs that have been with us for a long time, like they understand the difference between a FAS and an AFF. They understand what different hard drive types are and our crazy X part numbers that we have. Like there's some can be an assumption sometimes that we just think people know all of that stuff. And I kind of wanted to reset the script a little bit, and I kind of wanted to start from the very beginning. And I'm going to role play with you a little bit here. I'm going to pretend that I'm a customer. I'm net new. I've never heard the word ONTAP. I have no idea what a FAS is. I've heard of flash systems, but I don't really know any of our model numbers. Like, we're going to start from ground zero today because I would love to hear the perspective from you guys, from your team, what that actually looks like, and what some of the logic might be behind how you separate things out, why the different naming conventions, and how we're trying to align that to make it a little bit easier. How's that sound?
Absolutely, Nick. What you're talking about is what I like to colloquially call assumed tribal knowledge. It's like, well, everybody knows that.
Yeah.
Everybody knows what that is. Well, that's great if you work in that company or you've dealt with it for over a decade or whatever the case may be. But somebody who's net new is like, what's an ONTAP? Like, well, it's assumed tribal knowledge. Everybody knows what ONTAP is. Well, no, not necessarily. So I'm glad to clear that up from the hardware perspective.
And you know, guys, that just so you all know, this is an effort that I'm putting together that I was loosely inspired by other places doing it, just called Back to Basics. And there's going to be some other video content, on-demand video content I'm going to be making throughout the second half of this year on how to set up your first system, how to cable it up, how to upgrade ONTAP. Little things that I think we take for granted that people can struggle with sometimes when they're getting their first storage array. So I want to make sure that we are inclusive of, in that respect, that we also think about the people that are joining us for the first time as net new customers, because there's a lot of you out there. There's a lot of net new customers that we've seen come on board and come over to NetApp in the last few years. And I want to make sure that we're taking care of you folks as well. So let's get into the conversation because there's a lot to go over. I'm going to pull your slides up here. You ready to go?
I'm ready.
All right. So kick us off here. When let's say you go into an EBC and you have a customer that comes in, how do you introduce them to the portfolio platforms that we have? What is your typical sort of go-to opening?
My go-to opening is start something like this. I'm here to talk to you about the hardware offerings that are supported by our ONTAP systems. And I'm one of the few guys in this company who plays around with sheet metal far more than I do software. So
I can vouch for that.
Thanks, Nick. And that's exactly where we actually start the conversation. We get a nice little rapport going in before we start diving into what the bits look like and what I call the business end of the controllers actually look like, where you actually do the work,
right, when
you're actually working on them.
Nice. So let's kick over. Let's have a look at what we've got here in the family, because I want to put this one up. The next slide here, because I think we could just hang out here for a little bit.
Sure.
And I think this is sort of soft introduction, the soft landing to get people into. Here are the 4 key pillars. These are the ways that we look at this, and how we go about each of them. And in a way, there's no wrong answer here. There really isn't. You can certainly get into the nitty-gritty of performance-oriented Tier 0 apps versus super cheap and deep cold archiving. Like, certainly there's going to be some differences there in your design and your choice that you're going to make.
Sure.
But you're not going to have a bad time with any of these systems. And that's one of the big points, one of the big takeaways I want everybody to have today is it's not that nuanced about picking which one. You could literally host, and that's one of the beauties of NetApp that I've personally always loved, is that you can take any one of these systems and put just about any workload on it, and it's going to have a fantastic time.
That's right. Absolutely right. So without further ado, for those of you who are brand new to the NetApp portfolio, welcome. Nice to see you all. Thanks for joining. For those of you who are seasoned veterans, well, you know who I am because we probably interacted more than twice on Discord. At any rate, so starting from the left, working our way over to the right, FAS, the fundamental foundation of NetApp hardware. It runs ONTAP. Without FAS, all the others that you see in front of you would not exist. Why? We got to have that sheet metal powering the software. The FAS, as it sits right now, is what we call a hybrid flash storage. Why is it a hybrid? Well, you can have spinning media, and on board, we actually put a caching mechanism that we call flash cache. And flash cache helps you reduce the times you have to go to disk for those reads that may potentially overwhelm a smaller quantity of drives, or you just want even faster response out of it. So that is built in by default. It used to be a configurable option way back when we actually used to call it a PAM card. I know Nick remembers that. Performance acceleration module before we became
flash cache.
Before we became flash cache. Exactly. Yeah. And then when it became flash cache, it was still a PCIe adapter inside, and it consumed a slot. So if you need more I/O, but you consume that slot already, you had to pick one or the other.
And this even predated a lot of the newer form factors we've got, like that still use PCI, like M.2 and things like that we could from leverage in that respect. But yeah,
absolutely. And we'll get into the little nitty gritties about those here in just a moment. But moving just one step over to the right, the AFF C-Series. Well, wait a minute. What's this C-Series business you have here? You see, it's called a capacity all-flash storage. Why is it a capacity flash? Well, what we're trying to do is trying to bridge that gap. The spinning media industry has some development still behind it. A lot of naysayers will say that that 10K is going away. Well, there's a reason why the largest one offered in the market right now, I think, is about 2.4 terabytes. Not a lot of demand for high performance spinners because we have flash in mass now. But for the larger form factors drive, those 3.5-inch spinners, we are seeing a great deal of development that is still being done on those. The first adaptation was when we went from a SATA connector to a nearline SAS connector. Got rid of the serial ATA tunneling protocol, increased the queue depth. In the end, it's a SAS adapter, but it's still a 7,200 RPM drive. Now we see the lighter than air chambers that house the spinners in there, giving them less friction just due to air movement inside the chamber. So the C-Series is there to bridge that gap for people who want to cross into flash but don't really need sub 1 millisecond latency. Analogy I like to use, why would you buy a Ferrari when you're going to drive a quarter mile away to go to the grocery store and back every day? There's no need, other than it's pretty cool.
Because you can? I don't know.
Because you can. Yes. If you believe me, if you want to buy one, buy one. It's within your rights. Okay.
They're terrible to drive in traffic. you don't want to sit in town traffic in a flappy paddle Ferrari.
No, absolutely right. Now moving one step over to the right, here is the Ferrari, the AFF A-Series. This is where you want your sub 1 millisecond latency. This is your performance flash. I need this to be as fast as possible, as low latency as possible, high speed, low drag, whatever analogy you want to use. It works just fine. This is where you want to be if you have a need for that level of performance. One other thing I also failed to highlight, but I'll do it right now. You'll notice these bottom three right here say unified file, block, and object. That means regardless of any of those three, you can run NAS shares, whether they're over SMB or NFS, block, which is iSCSI, fiber channel, or NVMe over fabric, and your object storage, which is talking up to your cloud providers, your S3 protocols. But as we move over here to the final block, the latest offering that we're going to spend some time talking about as well is the ASA A-Series. You saw that on the lead-in video. This is exactly the same concept as the AFF A-Series, but it is limited and optimized for block-only traffic. Don't think about putting SMB. Don't think about putting NFS on it. Fiber channel, iSCSI, or NVMe over fabric are going to be your best friends and only options. In fact, so far the only options that you go into the GUI, you won't see any NAS availability at all, just because it's an all SAN array.
So we had our first question of the show pop up from our good buddy Richard. Says, NetApp has always offered itself as an all-in-one box for NAS and SAN. Why split it now?
Why now? The question on everybody's mind, and thank you for asking that question, Richard. You are spot on. The idea behind it was, there was some demand for customers who say, look, I don't want all this fancy stuff. All I want to do is buy my array to run iSCSI, because that's all I have the infrastructure for. I don't need all this other stuff. I just want to run it over iSCSI. But we never had a competitive market answer to that. That was just exclusively block. Some customers, believe it or not, just seek out, I only want a block array. I don't want to guess what's loaded on this. All I want is block. And we deliver that based on market demand.
And under the covers, there were tweaks made. Like you said, there were optimizations done to remove a lot of the unnecessary overhead in an all SAN kind of scenario like that. So there are some things that were optimized, improved, etc., just to be more focused, hyper-focused on an all SAN system like that. So
absolutely, with a traditional SAN implementation, you may or may not have, regardless of the vendor, you may or may not have what's called symmetric active-active pathing. If you have an array that doesn't do that, you have an optimized path where the controller serving the LUN is the one that's being accessed by the client, or you have the unoptimized path where the client is coming in through the partner, at which point it has to traverse a VTIC or some other mechanism within the partner to get to the LUN. Here we are optimizing all paths, so that way it is available regardless which node of the client you hit.
And I'm glad you brought that up. That's really the crux of the whole thing for me, is like the near enforcement of the active-active multipathing that is typically not enforced in other the more unified systems, right? Is that a fair way to judge it?
That's fair. I mean, it's just a matter of, if there is a, say, catastrophic power down of one of the nodes, we're looking at the IORT, the IO resume time. How quickly can I fail over at the application level? We're not worried about going controller failover, because we have that as optimized as we can.
Right.
But when we don't own the client OSs, the host OSs that are servicing that LUN, how quickly can that resume? That's where the active-active symmetric pathing comes into play.
Yep.
One more question. I think you're going to cover that in a future episode. Yes.
Yeah, we're definitely going to be having some of our SAN I don't want to spoil anything, but we're going to have one or some of our SAN experts on here going super deep on the ASA and all of the optimizations that were made on it. So stay tuned for that in an upcoming episode. Another question came in. Does NetApp use Mach 2 hard drives for speed or hammer drives for increased storage yet? I don't know about, is it Mach? Is M.2 Mach 2? I'd never heard Mach.2.
No, I've never.
I'm going to assume, Corey, you mean M.2 hard drives or flash media.
So on the FAS platforms, I was talking about those flash cache modules. Those are M.2 form factor, but that array relies on the 3.5-inch form factor for spinners or the carriage, in case you want to plug in a couple SSDs into it as well. Not quite sure what hammer drives are, but I don't know, but I'll find out. Follow up with me on Discord.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for the question, Corey and Richard. Back to our regularly scheduled program. So you opened up we opened up the conversation here of like, you really can't make a wrong choice. One of the reasons that I always use to justify that is a little mantra that I like to use called ONTAP everywhere. And I look at this because it really comes into play when you start looking underneath all of the four pillars there of the family. ONTAP 1 across the board was also one of the things that we announced earlier this year, that we were going to be consolidating a lot of our licensing, to the thunderous applause of the user base, which I haven't found anybody that says they hate that. I haven't found
either.
anybody that says they don't like the changes with ONTAP 1 and the consolidation efforts there. Getting more for the same kind of investment is always a good thing. And getting access to new toys, new features, new plugins, new whatever for licenses that you've already bought simply by going onto the support site and generating a new license file. Like that, it unlocks a lot of the things that people, like we had Keith Asen on here previously talking about it. I believe it as part of the launch, the ASA launch. Keith went over some of the ONTAP 1 announcements. And it was, it's just fantastic. Going back to ONTAP Everywhere, the reason that matters, and the reason I always describe it to people is, yes, we have a solution in AWS. Yes, we have a solution in Microsoft Azure. Yes, we have a solution in Google Cloud, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. No matter where you go, no matter what system you have of the 4 pillars, no matter which cloud provider you're in, no matter whether it's a virtualized version of it like Cloud Volumes ONTAP, or it's a first-party hosted version of the service from AWS or Azure, it's ONTAP. ONTAP everywhere, right? ONTAP is ONTAP is ONTAP, which means regardless of whether you're on a physical platform on-prem or whether you're on a software or native SaaS PaaS service in the cloud, it's ONTAP. So all of your Flex and Snap words work. All of your interop is the same. All of your applications work, like BlueXP or all of that stuff still works because of the fact that it's ONTAP across the board. That's unified, right? That is the ability for you to do that. The rest of it is more of just a sliding scale. Do you need more performance? Do you need more capacity? Maybe you need both. All of those are just little tunables under the covers that you can change. At the end of the day, it's still ONTAP that your workloads are connecting to. So
spot on. Absolutely spot on. There's one key difference that I want to alert you to, and that is, again, focusing over here on the right-hand side of the screen, the ASA A-Series. We have ONTAP 1, which you just described, but there's also the ONTAP 1 for SAN, and that is specifically targeting those systems only. Why? Well, ONTAP 1, as it sits, will include NAS, but if you want block only, you'll get ONTAP 1, but it will be for SAN, strictly for that, and carry those optimizations we were talking about before.
And guys, these aren't the only options. I want to be clear about this. This is specific to the AFF and FAS lineup. There's certainly Storage Grid, which we're going to have an episode here on the show in the future. There's certainly E-Series that we're going to have an episode on here in the future. So there are other platforms that sort of orbit everything else that's going on, and up to and including all of our massive cloud portfolio that we've got now after the last 5 or 6 years of all of that stuff. All kinds of episodes all the way up through the rest of the year where we're going to cover all of that stuff. This is specific to AFF and FAS and frankly ONTAP to a certain extent. There was a quick question I wanted to address really quick. I don't want to butcher. Mr. Cripps here said, slightly off topic, please forgive. Will this ONTAP 1 consolidation continue into the cloud offerings? I believe, go back and watch the ASA launch video or episode with Jeff Baxter and Keith Asen. There are some, I'm going to say yes, asterisk. There are some that it extends to, but it's not all inclusive in that respect, because what you have to understand about the cloud offerings is that Azure NetApp Files, for example, is not our product. It is Microsoft's. FSx for ONTAP and AWS is not our product. It is Amazon's. So you will receive your bill from them. Okay? Those are the little nuanced type of things that we have to keep in mind when we come to do the cloud offerings. But to a certain extent, yes, that will extend some. Asterisk. Check with your account team to go over all of that. Thank you for the question there. That was a good one. All right, so we've covered the intro to the portfolio. We've talked about ONTAP 1. We've talked about our cloud offerings in kind of very brief, high level. And I've done my little preachy rant about ONTAP Everywhere. Can we dig a little bit deeper into each of these and give people some more detail about like where... So let's start with FAS. Good old FAS. And if I can cue it up here, I had a little bit of a crusade this week. Actually,
how's that?
I'm going to let you do FAS, and then I'm going to give people a surprise, a present.
All right, sounds great.
Maybe I'll save it for the end if I can get it pulled up here. It's a picture I've got.
Well, if you insist, yes. Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
So here's our latest FAS offering. Now, what do we have in this thing? Well, we got 16 cores of CPU waiting for you, 128 gigs of memory, which is 2x what we used to offer in previous entry systems for this. Onboard ports, and we're going to take a closer look at the business end, so don't worry about squinting at this region of the screen just yet, because we're going to get to that. But high-level overview, we got 2 SFP28s. What's that mean? Well, they're primarily 25 gig Ethernet. Yes, they are capable of 10 gig, but for the HA and cluster interconnects, we strongly recommend 25. Then we also have some SAS ports. What's that for? Well, you buy new spinners, or you want to recycle existing shelves over to a new controller. This is how you attach them. We also have, and you'll get a much better look at this here in just a moment, a mezzanine slot. It's kind of hard to make out right here, but I'll kind of highlight it for you. This little blue band right here. That is actually a slot, because on the entry systems that we previously offered, the ports were on board. They were hard set. You could not help but use them. So you either bought it and used it, or you didn't.
Or you'd have to just replace the entire controller, right, with a different onboard option, yeah.
Exactly. And who wants to deal with all that mess, right? So in this case, we give you the option of 4 SFP28 ports capable of 1025, 4 32 gig fiber channel ports. That's new in an entry space. Previously, it was 16. We also have a very special adapter that is 2 ports of SFP28 and 2 ports of 32 gig fiber channel. Why? Well, for those of you who are hardcore SAN, you may want both, or you don't want to be limited to one connection method. This gives you a flexibility of saying, hey, now I can have my cake and eat it too by having both of those options.
I can have iSCSI and I can have fiber channel.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Or you can have your NAS if you want to do that alongside your fiber channel if you want to. And of course, Old Faithful, she will never go away, at least in the foreseeable future. 10 gig base T, still available for those of you who need that in your dedicated infrastructure. One change for those of you who are used to our previous generation entry systems, we had a USB type micro B console port. That is now a USB-C port on this system. Just this system for now. You'll probably see that in future platforms as they come available. But we also have the type A port for net booting or loading your OS if you absolutely need it.
I love that we're beating both Apple and Cisco to that.
Hey, you know, why not? Why not us? Somebody's got to make the change. Why not us?
Exactly. There we go.
So here we go. This is what I have been telling Nick I like to call the business end, and I promise you a more up close and personal view. This is where you're going to be doing the majority of your work. What do we have? Starting at the left, we have a management port, which is your BMC and your console ports. You'll notice a little bidirectional arrow in between the two. That means this USB-C is also a console port if you choose to use that type of connection mechanism. You keep one in your backpack, whatever. Type A ports, SAS ports, and the SFP28 ports. But down here, I promise you a more up close and personal view of the mezzanine. This is what the 25 gig SFP28 ports mezzanine actually looks like. Now, is that going to look any physically dissimilar to the fiber channel mez? Well, this little icon over here will have a fiber channel indicator and an Ethernet indicator. But beyond that, the only one that will look dramatically physically different is Old Faithful, 10 gig base T. You'll have 4 RJ45 ports in that slot instead.
Man, that is Old Faithful. I don't know that I ever had a system, even as a customer, that had RJ45 ports on it like that for 10 gig. Everything was always SFP plus.
Everything was always SFP plus, but you know, for those the 8000 series from a bygone era, we actually still had the option to use a PCIe adapter for those in case you needed it. We actually sold quite a bit of it, not as much as SFP28, SFP plus ports, but you know, to each their own, to each infrastructure their own.
So a question for you, just a more of a speculative one in a way. Finger in the wind gut feeling. Are you feeling people make the jump more frequently now from 10 gig to 25 gig? Is it becoming, has it reached a point of critical mass where it's commonplace now? Because I don't know. I'm seeing the most extreme sides jump to 25, 40, even 100 gig. in their core infrastructure. But people seem to be pretty happy with 10 gig where it's at.
You'd be surprised how much 10 gig is actually still out there. There's still a very high demand. And yes, you can plug in a 10 gig cable into the 25 gig ports and it will run at 10 gig. Just make sure you run a 10 gig cable, because there's a little EEPROM inside the transceiver that tells the port, I'm operating at 10 gig. Okay. If you want to run 10 gig, more power to you. Plug it in. Now, to directly answer your question, what I have seen so far is that 25 gig has been taken up that much more because nobody really got excited about 40 gig. 40 gig was out there to kind of give you an interim step to those larger QSFP form factor plugs. But nobody really made the jump to it. Some didn't see a wide audience, but that's okay if you did, because if you have a 100 gig switch, you just plug the 40 gig cable in a 100 gig switch and you're still off to the races. Everything's fine. But 25 has shown itself to be much more popular than 40 gig was intended to be.
Do you have any theories on why that is? Just out of curiosity.
I think it was more of like, if I can take my 40 gig port and I could break it into 4x10s, yeah, that's great from a port economy perspective. But 25 gigs on its way out with 100, we'll just wait for that. You know, it's more like future speculation and planning. It's like, hey, if we go to 40 gig now, then we got to change our entire plug architecture, from
switching
SFP
infrastructure too, right?
And
you got to completely rip out your whole switching infrastructure, or at least add the capability to house some like layer 2, 100 gig or 40 gig. I mean, there is a big. And then you got to swap all your adapters in your servers, your ESX hosts, whatever that might be. It's not a small lift. It's a pretty heavy lift to do that.
It's not a small lift, and some of those ASICs would actually allow you to break out into 4x10 gig connections, which saved you from having to buy new adapters for your equipment, but then you still had to replace your switches. Here with a 25 gig, I got a 10 gig SFP plus switch. I'm going to go to 25 and just retain my 10 gigs and migrate over time. That was more appealing. That, hey, I didn't have to change form factor of my plugs.
Gotcha. So going back to the 2820, guys, in case you don't know, we just announced this one. What was it? This is part of the C-Series launch earlier this year, right?
That's right.
Yeah, back in February. So this is the newer sort of entry system on the FAS side so what are the Delta improvements from like the 2600, 2700 that we've seen over the last 5 or 6 years? Because those were pretty well adopted. I've even got a 2650 here, for example, that I still love. I'm curious,
I know you do.
Where are the big deltas between the 2627 and the 2820s that we just announced?
So great question. So in the case of CPU, we got faster cores. We got double the memory. We've increased our cluster and HA ports over here from 10 gig to 25 gig. Nice. And as I mentioned before, we had onboard ports that could not be changed. Now you have a mezzanine say, what I really want is half 25 gig, half fiber channel. What I really want is 10 gig base T. We've given you options. Yeah.
But those options come at the cost. So you basically have to spec that out and make that decision before purchasing, right? It's not a swappable expansion card?
No, you can actually go ahead and say, you know what, I have 25 gig, but now I really need to accommodate my fiber channel infrastructure on here if I can. You can buy those mezzanine cards, change them out.
Or you can even get the right optics, right? It should be able to accommodate, using the right optics if you configure it that way with the future in mind or options in mind. Just swap out your optics. Should be good.
There you go.
Okay, so bigger CPU, faster CPU cores, more memory, more NVRAM as well, I'm assuming is also on there?
More NVRAM is per controller as well, which is your battery protection for inbound writes. Absolutely.
And we beat Apple and Cisco to the punch on USB-C console ports. Excellent.
You said
win across the board. All right, so I think from a FAS perspective, this is where we see people. The reason we call it hybrid is because this is where we see people kind of mixing in 3.5-inch spinners with some 2.5-inch SAS spinners, or even some flash, some SAS SSDs that might go into a 2246 shelf, for example.
Sometimes, yes, absolutely.
Yep. It's kind of the super hybrid, all-in-one workhorse box. That's kind of the way I think about it. It doesn't really have any one specialty other than the fact that its specialty is it can do it all. And that's kind of the way that I look at it. I hope I'm not mischaracterizing it, but that's when I think of FAS, that's the way I think about it.
Perfect.
All right, so we've gone over FAS. Where do we go from here? What's the next hop? Okay, I don't need certain spinning media anymore, or maybe we go the opposite end of the spectrum. Instead of going to going for 3.5-inch spinners, maybe we go to the opposite end. Maybe we do this as a Goldilocks style. Too cold, now we're going up to the hot side. Let's talk about the A-Series, the AFFs.
You got it.
That is tier 0, high performance.
High speed, low drag. Let's talk about it now.
Low drag. Was that was in Warhammer, or was that StarCraft? I can't remember what that was in, but you're tingling my geek frequency here for some reason.
You're close with the StarCraft reference. Red Alert 2.
Oh God! Did you know they remastered that, by the way? Quick little aside.
Yes,
they re-released it. It's fantastic. You can get it on Steam.
4 is out there too.
Oh, so good.
So, what is new in the AFF A-Series? Well, in this case, we have the A150. This is for the entry-level A-Series that you may or may not have access to. Again, high speed, low drag. When we compare this to the previously offered AFF C190, we got 24 cores. We got between 30 to 40% more performance when you compare that to the C190. 64 gigs of memory, still got your NVMe out there. But as I mentioned before, 10 gig cluster interconnect. Why did we do 10 gig? Again, 25 is the future. Well, again, this is entry space. You want to have low cost, low profile, maybe already existing infrastructure, don't want to do a whole lot of heavy lifting. This drops right in. Some of you, and you yourself included, Nick, may remember these UTA2 ports. We can switch those modes over from 16 gig fiber channel or 10 gig Ethernet. So if you don't want to do either or, that's available to you to use. We got the SAS ports on there for your storage expansion, and we got, as I mentioned before, the old micro B USB ports. The FAS 2820 is the new kid on the block with the USB-C. You have to forgive it on that regard. But the exciting part is, for those of you who still rely on Old Faithful, there she is. You still have another option to get that 10 gig base T on the entry space system if you have that type of infrastructure. Specs are the same, ports are different. So what do they look like from the business end? Exactly what they look like in the other slide. From left to right, we got our SAS ports. These two 10 gig ports are our 10 gig base, SFP plus. Here's our UTA2 ports, all 4 of them in a line. These could be 10 gig or fiber channel. The limit is if you say, I want this port right here to be fiber channel, it's going to flip this one as well. So
okay.
no big deal. You change
so they're
one,
in pairs?
You change one in the port pair, you get it on both. But that also means that this one over here, you put on 10 gig, this one's also going to be 10 gig. So you can have all one or both.
Is that so? On the print on the underneath each of the port, there's E0C/0C. Help us decode what that's supposed to imply.
Very simple. E, Ethernet.
Yep.
So E0C would be an Ethernet port, or it's 0C as a fiber channel port.
Gotcha.
That's all it is.
So when you're going in looking for your connectivity and things like that, I got it. Okay.
Absolutely. And you'll notice, because they can toggle between the two, remember that stencil I was talking about on the 25 gig mezzanine on the 2820, you see a little Ethernet symbol right here, but then you have these little triangles pointing left and right. That's the fiber channel symbol. Okay. Console ports, USB port, and your management port. But when we move our 10 gig base T, what looks different? Just so this right here.
You hit on the fact that this is an entry-level system. It sort of supersedes the previous C190, and the reason to choose 10 gig cluster interconnects versus 25 gig. I think it's important to remember. You said it. It's important to remember that this is entry-level. A lot of people at entry-level are not going to have 25 gig switching infrastructure. They're not going to have 25 gig server adapters in all of their ESX hosts, for example. So when I look at this more of like a small to medium business of somebody that just needs some shared storage, maybe for user home drives, maybe for remote office type of thing where there's 1 to 3 smaller ESX hosts or something along those lines. You're not going to have a lot of 25 gig infrastructure. I think it was really clever and really smart to stick with 10 gig on this one because it's welcoming. It lets people use all of the existing stuff that they've probably already got from the last 15 years.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. So I don't see any questions about. Oh, Corey clarified it's the Rocketeers from Red Alert 2.
He's absolutely right.
Yep. And all I can hear in my head now is the Hell March. So it's going to be that kind of day where I'm going to have that stuck in my head. All right. Moving on. All right. Now we're getting to Golden
Red Alert. To continue with the Red Alert and now pushing away, let's go to the AFF Series. That was for you, Corey.
Yes. Nice.
So, AFF Series, where does this fit in? Well, the AFF Series, as I mentioned, maybe you want something better than spinners, but you want it less than sub 1 millisecond. Maybe you've got a lot of legacy 10K spinners or older 7200 RPM drives sitting out there that are just taking up a lot of rack space, taking up a lot of power consumption and outlets. All that is a factor. This is where you can transition from those over to flash, have better than hard drive latency, but not quite be at a speedster level like you would with the AFF A-Series. First up on the docket is the C250. Look at this guy. You got 24 cores in it, 128 gigs of memory. As we mentioned, SFP28s, 25 gig Ethernet primarily. We also have on board, and you'll get a better view of this here in just a moment, 2 10 gig base T ports. So in case you need that infrastructure, it's already there, just plug into it. And we also have some mezzanine slots available for you. Again, a 4-port SFP mezzanine, a 2-port 100 gig, that's primarily used for NVMe storage shelf expansion. And then you have 32 gig fiber channel along with your console ports. If we were to go ahead and advance, as I just did, to the business end of it, from the left to right, console, USB, still got the micro USB on there because that platform came out with ONTAP 9.8 when you and I made the more power video that you referenced earlier. Nice throwback. Your management port for your BMC. Again, you got the 2 10 gig base T ports here, but these two here are your cluster and HA. So where do I plug in my IO? Here's your 2 slots, 1 and 2, up here on the top row. Plug in whatever combination that you need. If you need a guide, always refer to your sales team, your SE, or if you have access to the NetApp website, Hardware Universe will always be your guide as well.
I fell in love. I think this is a sweet spot, and I think history will look very fondly on this platform. And I say that sort of, with a little bit of crossed arms and a little bit of, puffing my chest out because I've been through the 500F, I've been through the A250, and this in combination with some of the massive payload that 912 brought to the table, like the marriage of those two things really hit a sweet spot. And I think if you're someone that has been a customer or had storage in your enterprise for a long time, you likely have multiple shelves of disks. You might have racks and cabinets full of controllers and shelves full of spinner disks, hybrid SSD disks. Where this sweet spot hits is the consolidation and the density. But it also delivers a level of performance that is somewhere between FAS and AFF. It is hitting a sweet spot of all things that matter to everyone that I don't remember us hitting in a way that we've done like at this level before. This C250 box is sorcery. It should not be as powerful as it is, but it is. And not only that, you're getting NVMe drives. You're getting 15 terabyte drives at that. So configured, I can attest, because there's one over there in the rack, you're going to get 265, I think it's 265 terabytes of usable capacity in 2U. 265 terabytes of NVMe all-flash system in 2U.
Couldn't have said it any better myself.
I don't know anywhere else that exists currently.
I don't either. And at the risk of sounding personally biased, as somebody who was in on the A250 project from inception all the way to go to market, this is hands down my favorite controller, honestly.
Yeah. Not to mention the flexibility you have with I/O here.
Exactly.
I don't want to let that slip by too much. The one that I have here has a 4-port, I think it's a 25 gig adapter, but I'm using
25.
10 gig.
Yep.
And then it's got the second slot, has a 4-port 16 gig fiber channel adapter in it.
32.
Oh, 32, excuse me. You're right. So run all your NAS shares, run all your fiber channel SAN workloads, whatever you could possibly want to throw at this thing, it will handle it and it will run circles around it. It has the capacity and the performance to do it all in one. This might be my favorite system that we've ever made. I'm going to put that out there. It might be hyperbole. This might be the absolute sweet spot for just about any user in any configuration to do any workload at any level. It's one of those kind of magical sweet spot systems that you really only see maybe once every decade or so. This is it. This is the one.
It is. It's pretty awesome. But there's more.
There's
let's
more.
Not belabor. There's more here. What do we got? We got the C400. Oof. This is for those of you who want to have, the same type of I/O consolidation or the capacity consolidation, but you just need more of it. You're going to have support for more shelves, more power, to borrow Nick's moniker, and also you have more choices for your I/O expansion. I didn't go through the process of listing all your available options because there's a lot of different I/O cards, and your sales team, your account rep, Hardware Universe, those are going to be your best friends. I didn't want this to be comprehensive, but in this case, 40 cores, 40 CPU cores with 256 gigs of memory inside of each of these controllers. These are awesome boxes, no question about it. We have 200 gig ports for your cluster, 25 gig ports for the HA. Well, we just combined it on the other two. Why didn't we do this one? Well, the secret is, 25 gig, it was just more stable and it was there. Yeah. And we thought, why not use it? Let's use something that's better that we already have. What a concept. Yep. SAS ports on there. We're going to take a closer look at the business end here in a moment. You're going to have 4 SFP28s, which are your onboard Ethernet, 4 SFP Plus ports for your fiber channel, and you got the access to 5 PCIe slots. Looks something like this. 1 through 5 all the way at the top, but from left to right we have SAS. Here's your 25 gig HA. Here's your 100 gig cluster, console ports, BMC management port, your USB ports here, and your 25 gig, or if you're so inclined, 16 gig fiber channel.
So this is that sweet spot just with more I/O and double the resources.
More I/O, more power. Maybe you are somebody, I remember a couple of years ago, and this is before we actually had this system out, but the concept is the same. Had a large customer up in the Northeast who literally had 6 full racks of 4 nodes, and the rest were shelves, all mixed bag. 10K spinners, 7,200 RPM system, whatever the case may be. I imported the workload, I did a sizing on it, and I found that we could consolidate 6 full racks into the predecessor of the A400, the A300, and 4 SSD shelves. We took, what is that? I don't even know how many rack units that is off the top of my head. I think it's like 200.
210, something like that. Yeah,
something like that. Over 200.
42 times 6. Yeah.
Over 200 rack units. We got it down to 11. 11. And they were paying per rack unit. Now think about all the electrical outlets they saved. Think of all the rack unit costs they saved. Their colo, yeah, they got it down
That
to
would cut your
11.
floor tile, lease in your colo in half.
You went from 6 cabinets to 1.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. The density on stuff, we're really hitting a point of critical mass in the last couple of years with density. And,
we really are.
And much like we haven't seen, and guys, we're talking about 15 terabyte drives here. The drive manufacturers are hitting like 30 terabyte marks. Like it's coming. Like we're not even not even halfway there.
Exactly.
So this is going to get a little bit more fun in the next few years.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
And here's how we're going to help get there. With the high end of the C series, here's the C800. This, if you thought the previous one was powerful, this one's even more powerful. Look at this. We're at 40 cores. Now we're at 96. 96 cores, over a terabyte of memory. Is this thing fast? Yes, it is. Got 4 QSFP 28 ports on there. That's your HA and cluster interconnect. We were able to consolidate them into the same interfaces this time. I'll show you what that looks like here in a moment. 4 PCIe slots, but I see 5. Yes, this card up here in the upper left-hand corner in slot 1, that is guaranteed to be on every shipment. I'll tell you why here in just a moment. And we got our console ports. Here's why. When you are clustering this together, the outside ports get clustered together, the inside ports get clustered together. That way you have 100 gig cluster and HA, but it's all on the same speed. It's not 125. It's all at 100.
Got it.
Got your console ports.
Still needs to be on separate switches though, right? Cluster and so when you say they're both 100 instead of 125, are you referring to cluster interconnect versus host connection, or?
No, this is all cluster and HA. This is all cluster and HA. We just put it all on the singular speed Ethernet.
That's what I missed. Okay, so you're talking about that. Got it. Never mind.
Yes.
I'm good.
Now, if you need 25 gig or 10 or 32 gig fiber channel, you got 4 slots per controller to go ahead and populate however it is that you please. But we also have the E0M, which is your management interface, your BMC, which is a separate interface, and USB ports.
What are the other? So you can put just about anything in these PCI slots. That's what the other thing I wanted to drive home. Right? Is there any limitations with this? If this were mine, I would call the controllers Ricky and Bobby, because this thing just wants to go fast.
Absolutely.
Right? There's like, what are the Are there any limitations here of what you can put in those PCI expansion slots?
Sometimes there are thermal dissipation rules. It's like we don't want to put you in a dangerous configuration where you might end up actually melting the controller. That'd be bad. And random electrical arcs in a data center are not my favorite thing. I don't want to see any fire release systems going off for whatever reason. So Hardware Universe is actually going to be the best guide in that regard. If you don't have access to it, talk to your account team, say like, what can I put in each of these slots? And it's very simple to tell that.
Nice. I was just reminded of something as a fun little quick aside. I know we gotta wrap this up, but I just said Ricky Bobby for name. I would love to hear you guys come jump in Discord and tell me. Let's have a fun thread on what you name your systems, what fun names you've given them over the years. So I'll throw out there that when I was a customer, I had Foghorn Leghorn, and I had Bert and Ernie. Those were my two main sort of systems. One did VMware, and one did Oracle in Exchange.
When I first joined NetApp in the support center in 2008, I'll spare the customer name, but my favorite HA pair was Yogi and Boo Boo. And one day, Boo Boo had failed over to Yogi, and I felt kind of embarrassed when I called up the customer and say, "Yeah, I'm calling about this outage on Boo Boo." We resolved the issue, but
you should have done it in Yogi's voice. Go, "Hey, Boo Boo."
I'm sure they've heard that more than once.
Oh yeah. But yeah, guys, come join Discord. I want to hear what your systems are named. What fun names you've given them over the years. All right, so we got to the C800. What's left? Obviously, we got to go basically the ASA versions of that stuff, right?
That's exactly where we're going, and that's what we're going to talk about right now. So without further ado,
a couple of quick questions came in the chat real quick. Let's let's address those real quick while they're kind of relevant. OG1 asked, will 100 gig front end be supported on the A or C series? Currently on the 100 gig is only for expansion shelves. So great question there. I'll follow that on with, are we looking at being able to add more than one shelf at any point in the future?
Okay, so adding more than one shelf is just not possible with that particular platform because it has to be over 100 gig. This is a common question, OG1. You've asked me this at least once or twice before on Discord, and that's okay. I forgive you for that. The best answer I could give you right now is file an FPVR just to make sure, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. All right. There you go. Sebastian's up next. He says, now, why does the C400, A400 have the port double names like with the UT adapters on the smaller systems? We did go over that, Sebastian. I just want to make sure that you might have missed it, you might have joined late. I asked the same question, and it's really the difference between Ethernet and fiber channel on the UTA ports. Is that right, Scott?
That's right, but the C400 and the A400 does not have UTA2 ports on it. Instead, it's one or the other. You order it with 25 gig Ethernet, or you order it with 16 gig fiber channel. So you can't flip between the two. If you need both, you're going to have to rely on a PCIe adapter to do that.
Right, mez cards. That would be my suggestion. Get a big enough system that supports both kinds of mezzanine cards, and you can have best of both worlds.
And the A400, C400 is more than capable of doing that.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for the questions. Good stuff. All right, so back to the ASA to kind of bring this home. In the event that you want a SAN only system,
yes.
And there is definitely demand out there for that. It's one of the reasons that we've refreshed the lineup. Because we have heard that demand from our customers. So walk through these. What differences are we going to see when it comes to doing an all SAN version of some of the other appliances?
Certainly. NetApp has traditionally offered an all SAN array, with our E-Series product offering, but that was, for those customers who want that, thank you for supporting that system. They are great systems for the purpose that they are designed and built for. In this case, the demand point that we've been constantly hearing is that we want that, but we want it running ONTAP. We love ONTAP. We don't want to have to worry about another OS and another management GUI. When are you going to do this type of offering? Well, we've gone and done it. Here it is. And let's talk about it right now. So here's the A150. Hardware-wise, identical to what you just saw with the AFF A150. All it is just the all SAN derivation of the exact same thing. Okay, I don't need to belabor this anymore, but one thing I will say about this is the demand for an all SAN array with exclusively 10 gig base T is it wasn't even asked for. Nobody wanted that. So we just said, okay, we'll do this in a unified format. Not to say we can't revisit it in the future, but right now as it sits, this is where we're going with it in a unified configuration with those UTA2 ports. Sebastian.
Likely, right. So exactly. Likely you're going to see most people using fiber optic cabling when they're doing SAN stuff. For me, it's kind of rare to see copper in a SAN scenario. It's certainly doable, but I haven't seen very much of it. I like the fact that we're giving people the option.
Yes.
If they want to use DACs or if they want to use like traditional twin-ax or whatever it might be, you've got the option here.
Absolutely.
But for the most part, you're going to see people using SFP optics with fiber cabling.
Most of the time.
Yeah.
Some like the DAC cables, that are twin-ax copper.
Yeah.
That's fine. Whatever your preference is.
So I do see you've got 12 gig mini SAS here connectivity. What is the expandability? Did we go over that? So for things like spindle count, shelf count, things like that, are these gonna have the same sort of limits as the
same.
A250? Okay.
Or A150.
Or 150, excuse me.
Yep, no problem. But for the 250, same limits apply. You got the same mezzanine slots, you got the same core count. Again, no different hardware-wise, just a different offering. You want to be able to have this strictly in a block-only format, more power to you. We got it for you. Plug it in, lock it in, and crank it up.
And 10 base T, I see.
10 gig base T is still on board, just like we did with the C250. But you still have those mezzanine slots. You say, I really want to have 25 gig. I really want to have all 32 gig fiber channel. More power to you. I want to have one in one slot, one or the other. More power to you. You've got options.
Love it.
The ASA A-400, again, all this stuff I'm showing you is hardware identical. It is going to be the exact same performance, the exact same CPU and memory specifications. Now, depending on your workload, your performance may actually be higher on this because of optimization, or maybe that's just how your infrastructure is set up. So your mileage may vary. Batteries are not included, and definitely be aware of falling rock.
Got it.
As we go on to the business end, again, Sebastian, this is for you. Ethernet configuration. You can see this little Ethernet stencil that's right here. That means these are strictly Ethernet ports. You cannot toggle the mode of those. If you need a fiber channel port, plug it into one of these available slots up here. Okay. And unified, again, you can't. It's kind of hard to see those little bidirectional arrows, but that's the fiber channel insignia. It kind of looks like a couple inverted fish hooks.
Well, you can see like the port naming conventions as well, right above the ports with the E0C, 0C sort of naming convention there. Yeah,
you got it. Just as we did with the previous one.
Yeah. So, Sebastian, to your point there as well.
Yep. Now, ASA A-800. Again, this is the big guy. Here we go. 96 cores, over a terabyte of memory. Still got your I/O flexibility. Still have the dedicated 100 gig card up here in slot 1. Again, that's cluster and HA. That is not for host. You need 100 gig on your host. You plug it into one of these available 4 ports here.
Nice.
Now, one last one for you that we didn't get to talk about before. Oh, what about this guy, the A900? Okay, I did not talk about this because we don't have that as a C platform, but we did recently offer this as well for those of you who like the modular architecture on this big guy here.
I do have a video on my Data Center Dude channel going over the AFF version of this same platform, so you guys can go check. That was from December of the A900 has been out since December of 21, so
sounds right.
A little over almost 2 years now. But look at the I/O on the back of this monster. Like
exactly.
this is next level kind of stuff. I'll personally never get to manage.
You've got 10 slots here. Now, I'm not going to go down how many I/O modules that we have for these slots. There's a lot. 32 gig fiber channel, 100 gig Ethernet, 40 gig Ethernet.
The answer is yes.
Yes. Yes. The answer is yes.
That should just be the onboard I/O ports. Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Any combination you could possibly want. This is the Mac. This is the big daddy Mac truck of storage systems right here. Since with this one came up, OG threw another question in real quick. We're not seeing MCC fiber channel support on the ASA A900 like with the AFF. Is that something that's forthcoming? We've just launched it a month ago, so I'm curious, is that something that people can expect in the future? It's a great question, OG.
It is a great question, and unfortunately, I got to give you this answer. Stay tuned for details. I can't discuss futures.
Watch that space.
Watch this space. Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right.
Now, on the back end of that guy, very simple. Why is this one so simple? Because all the I/O modules are outside of the controller. You want to upgrade. Watch Nick's video on the AFF A900. You want to upgrade from your 700 to a 900. You can do an in-place controller upgrade and take advantage of the increased horsepower in this.
I'm going to send this to marketing right now because that just needs to be the new slogan for the A900.
The answer is yes.
The answer
I love
is
it.
Yeah.
So you got your console ports on the back.
Yep.
USB ports and your E0M.
Basically, anything management goes directly on the controller. Anything that's I/O connectivity. So, can you go back one more slide here, Scott, so we can look at the back of the business end, kind of down there in the bottom? So basically, if you do your cabling out to the left and right on each of the sides, you can literally pull those entire controllers out right there in the middle without affecting anything. And you can do once it's failed over and takeover status, you can pull the controller out, put another one in. This was the promise that we put out there on. I should have talked about this on the AFF slide earlier, but we'll do it for the ASA as well. It's because the same premise applies. This is the promise that we delivered upon with the A700, that we would enable in-place chassis upgrades so that you could have the same chassis for a decade. And that's really what this delivered upon with the A900, is these in-place chassis upgrades. If you're a big enough customer, if you have big enough demand to need one of these systems, know that you're going into this, you're going to be able to just do in-place hot controller swaps without having to unhook any I/O.
Who wants to do a rip and replace on an 8U system? That's a lot of heavy.
I mean, I'd be happy to if it was the competitors, you know.
Keeping track of all those I/O connections and against all those modules, and then you got to label everything. And oh, I hope we hooked it up right before we hit the power button. Nope, got it all right here, simplified for you. And one thing that I did fail to mention earlier on, for you, Dr. Evil, since you brought this up about the in-place controller upgrade, FAS 2820, you can do it on there. You got your 2620. 2720, you want to leverage the new controllers, we're going to support it on there.
We're going to have to talk after this because I need to upgrade my 2650 that's back there. All right. Can we pull that first? I think that's it for the ASAs, right? Were we missing anything?
It absolutely is, but one critical point I want to make everybody. If you do have access to Hardware Universe, this is going to be your guide for all things of power, thermals, weights, dimensions, certifications that you might be looking for, or it's like, what are my I/O options? It's got it all. If you don't have access to it, talk to your account rep, talk to your SE, let them give you a guided tour if you want to, or you say, look, I just want to know what my options are before I buy this thing. They'll be more than happy to at least give you that answer.
Yeah, this is where you get into sizing conversations and scope of workloads and things like that. When you understand that and you're kind of engineering backwards to accommodate that workload, this is where Hardware Universe will come in, and you can start plugging in some numbers of IOPS that you'll need, or spindle counts, or rack units, or cable connectivity. All of that, all of those details are applicable to Hardware Universe when you're approaching it that way.
Always engage your account rep for those conversations, because as you were saying, hardware level details, Hardware Universe is going to be your best friend. Once you get into sizing, that's a different thing, but it leverages the data in Hardware Universe. So it's kind of a mixed bag in that regard. But back to your original comment here.
Yeah, let's tie a bow on this because I feel like that we mentioned this earlier, but we may have had some people come in after the fact. How would you, after we've talked about all of these different platforms, give me the 60-second, like, how does somebody get started, other than like call your account rep? Like, if they want to look at a particular system, what's the best way to judge which of these 4 pillars to choose?
Well, in that case, yes, always engage the account rep first and foremost. But before you decide, hey, I want to pick vendor X over vendor Y, and I hope vendor X is NetApp whenever you make that conversation, decide what it is you're trying to achieve. If you are a small shop that just requires hey, I need a place to store my Word documents, my spreadsheets, and my PowerPoints, you're not going to need a Ferrari to do that. I mean, if you want to buy one for that, I'm happy to sell it to you. Yeah. But if you're just looking at strictly a consumption, or just like a landing place for your data, or maybe it's a backup target for all you know, it doesn't need to be uberly powerful, then you can lean more towards like the FAS. But if you say, you know what, I've got a lot of this legacy hardware sitting up in my rack that I'm just tired of it taking up so much space. My electric bill is through the roof. Energy costs are going up. I need to consolidate all those spinners into something smaller. Then you're going to lean more towards a C-Series. But say you're fortunate enough to grow your business to a larger scale enterprise, a larger size medium business, and you say performance is utmost. I got a database that has to be as fast as possible. Then you will lean more towards an A-Series. But again, like I said, those customers who love the E-Series but didn't love the fact it didn't run ONTAP, and I said, look, I'm just a block shop. And there are a lot of strictly block shops out there, especially in the fiber channel world. People put in fiber channel infrastructure, it stays there for a long time, and they eke out as much as they can about it. Why? It works. And
I was a customer earlier or 2 weeks ago that has brocade switches from 2007. Because they just because it's fast enough. They don't need anything else. That's what it's for, and they don't want to have to touch it. It's like what do they say? Don't do maintenance on something that's 10 to 15 years old unless you want to, you know, it's like kicking the hornet's nest. It'll fall over if you go in and touch it. So, but yeah, there's a lot of legacy workloads that are out there that are still running some of that older 4 and 8 gig fiber channel stuff, and they might have upgraded the adapters and the optics and things like that. But yeah, those switches still run.
They run just fine. And if it ain't broke, no need to fix it. But if you say, hey, this clunker server that's been running my storage for me, or maybe my legacy storage controller just isn't cutting the mustard anymore, but I want to remain block only, the ASA A-Series is going to be your best friend.
It's also a great way to jump from, if you've got fiber channel attached DAS on a specific older server, older workload, it's a great jump to just hook that up to and move the LUNs over. We've got tools that can help you migrate. We've got XCP for file and NAS. We've got what's the volume mover tool? I can't remember.
Volume move.
Volume move. We've got storage vMotion that you can use at the application level, which I personally always recommend to try and do first if you can from point A to point B. Use the application to move its data or mirror its data. So if you're doing SQL or Oracle or anything like that, you can just mirror stuff over. VMware SVMotion, storage vMotion. But yeah, I'm looking at this going, if I'm starting a new business, if I've never had a NetApp before, I'm going to point you at C-Series. It is the best of both worlds. You're going to get the performance, the density, the capacity, and all of that stuff all in one without a lot of the frills of the cabling and external shelves and all of that stuff. It's magical what you can do with that C-Series lineup. It really is. It's going to go in as a sweet spot long term for us.
But if you're budget constrained, the FAS 2820 will do an excellent job in that it won't have as low of latency as the C-Series, but maybe your capacity points might be a little bit different. I don't have a need for 100 plus terabytes. I only need like 30. Okay, well, you're going to lean more towards FAS. But if you are in that 100 plus capacity and you say, I need it to be fast, but not like super fast, land with the C-Series.
Yeah.
It will serve you well.
FAS if you've got spinners.
FAS if you got spinners, or your capacity points and your budget are going to dictate those things as well.
I'm trying to think of any
Always
other
have this conversation with your account team.
Yes. And come find me in Discord, or come find Scott in Discord if you have questions about any of the hardware platforms. If you have any questions about the cloud stuff, come find me. I'm in there all the time. Doesn't matter what time. So, you killed your share. I was like, who's controlling things? Drew's not there. All right. Let's see. There you go. This is exactly what Jeff Bezel would say. OG, great advice. Yes. I will say I call it the Stormtrooper bezel. The C-Series bezel looks amazing in the rack, sitting next to some HP servers and some Cisco switches. It looks fantastic. It goes right with it. I saw one of the ASA ones, and we jokingly call it dark mode in Discord. I think that's kind of cute.
That's not unfair. I like that.
I'm totally going to take Richard up on this just becoming the official slogan of the A-Series, or the 900s, AFF or ASA. The answer is yes.
we definitely need to have this conversation with Jeff Bezel, as you said.
Yes, we do. Well, Scott, as always, I know we ran a little bit long here. There was a lot to cover, and I think we did it. I think we did a pretty good job of getting people a foot in the door of understanding what NetApp really brings to the table across the entire hardware portfolio. And we didn't even talk about Storage Grid. We didn't even talk about S3 Object. We didn't even talk about, you mentioned the E-Series stuff for the absolute raw horsepower performance stuff that we'll see in like media and entertainment for rendering and things like that. Definitely we'll have some guests come on. Got to get Duncan on here for Storage Grid. Got to get, I can't remember his name for E-Series, but we'll get him on here. Mitch, yes. We'll get them on here and talk about all of those platforms throughout the rest of the year as we head our way barreling towards Insight. Guys, it's less than 4 months away.
I'm excited.
Let that sink in for a second. Like, it terrifies me because there's so much to do between now and then in the next 3 months. But to everybody, make sure you're keeping your notifications on because we're going to have some big announcements, I would say within the next month. I will safely say that about things that are going to be going on at Insight. So definitely make sure you go to insight.netapp.com and put your email in to be notified when registration opens up. We're going to be doing lots of fun activities both in Discord and at the show revolving around the community. I am personally making it my own mission to bring community to the show this year. So you're going to see a lot of stuff that's going to be community focused at Insight this year. So lots of sessions, lots of good stuff, lots of episodes of NetApp on air leading up to the show. So we'll be talking about it much more. Scott, thank you very much again for being probably our most active regular at this point on the show.
I really appreciate the invitation, Nick. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me again. And for those of you who have any questions, comments, or snide remarks for me, I'll be on Discord here in about another 15 minutes, just in case. And hope to see you all at Insight.
Yes, indeed. All right, Scott, I'm gonna got a few closing remarks, but I'm gonna boot you out of here so I can say bye to people.
No problem.
Thanks again, dude.
Nick.
Bye. All right, guys, that's going to do it for us today. It's been a dry few weeks. As I said at the top of the show, we had Cisco Live last week. We're back in trade show season. It's back in full gear. Probably started last week with Cisco Live. We've got all of everything's happening here in Vegas right now. And I would be remiss if I did not say that Las Vegas in the desert are now your Stanley Cup champions. The Las Vegas Golden Knights won the Stanley Cup last night, in case you were living under a rock. But yes, 6 years ago, there was no professional sports teams in Las Vegas. Now we have the Stanley Cup champion, Las Vegas Golden Knights. The Oakland Raiders have moved and are now the Las Vegas Raiders. And the Oakland A's are now coming. And they did just also approve a $4 billion sports complex with an arena in it. So if you read into that, there's an NBA team coming at some point within the next decade. So we're going to go from no sports teams to all the sports teams in that much time here in Vegas. So it's really exciting. So coming to trade shows is going to offer some different things, such as Insight. And to top it off, a lot of the vendors are concentrating their shows here to Vegas. So we're seeing Oracle move here. We're seeing VMware Explorer, move here. But yeah, so we hope to see you guys at Insight later this year. I hope to see you all at Insight later this year. And I really hope to see you all in Discord. If you haven't joined yet, you really should. You can go to our simple landing page, netappdiscord.com. You'll find a join button there and a little bit of overview of what it is and what we do in there. But at the end of the day, it is about hanging out with peers, having direct access to product managers, engineers, and some of our executives to be able to give feedback, to interact with peers in a much more real-time fashion. You can ask questions, get help, all of that stuff. And we've got some fun community stuff that happens in there as well. More on that later this year. But I'm going to get out of here. Stay tuned for updates on further episodes. Discord is the best place to track what the upcoming episodes are going to be, so if you want on that. Also, you can subscribe to the NetApp YouTube channel here. Turn that bell on so you get notified anytime a new episode gets posted in advance. You can also follow us on Twitch, follow us on LinkedIn, all of the good social media stuff. Make sure you're following NetApp everywhere you go. You can follow me everywhere at Data Center Dude. I make TikToks as well, so you can come find me over there. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'll leave a link down in the description below. But yeah, Discord's the place to be. That's the one. Come hang out. It's kind of the most central hub of all things community here at NetApp. But until next time, my name is Nick Howell. Thank you guys for joining us today, and we will see you guys next time.